I never thought I'd be the kind of man sitting here telling strangers about how my life unraveled because of a single girl's trip. When I first met Rose, she was this warm, funny, free-spirited woman who made everything feel lighter. She had this way of leaning in when you spoke, like you were the only person in the room who mattered. That was over 7 years ago, and in that time, we'd built a life I thought was solid. Steady jobs, a cozy home, and a rhythm that felt safe. Our relationship had its ups and downs, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. We argued sometimes, mostly over little things like dishes left in the sink or who forgot to put the clothes in the dryer. But there was love. Or at least I thought there was. I believed we were on the same team, facing life together, planning for the future. About 6 months ago, Rose mentioned that her best friend Sarah was organizing a girls' trip. They were going to Miami for a long weekend. Beaches, cocktails, dancing, the works. It wasn't unusual for her to hang out with her friends, but this was the first overnight trip since we got married. She pitched it as a once-in-a-long-time kind of thing. I didn't want to seem controlling, so I told her it sounded fun. Still, there was a flicker of unease in my chest. Maybe it was because I'd been working late shifts and we hadn't spent much time together lately. Or maybe it was just that gut feeling that you can't really explain but can't quite shake. She brushed off my half-hearted concerns with a smile and a hug. "It's just the girls, babe," she said. "We'll be tanning, gossiping, and drinking too many margaritas. You've got nothing to worry about." And I wanted to believe her, so I did. The weeks leading up to the trip were busy. Rose seemed more energized than usual, buying new outfits and giggling over her phone with Sarah. I assumed they were coordinating itineraries and outfits. I noticed a few dresses and swimsuits I'd never seen before, ones that seemed a little more revealing than her usual choices, but I told myself it was just vacation mode kicking in. The night before she left, she was almost bouncing with excitement. I helped her pack, tucking a little note in her bag that said, "Have fun. I love you." I wanted her to feel supported. I wanted her to know I trusted her. Looking back, maybe I was also trying to reassure myself. When I dropped her off at the airport the next morning, she kissed me quick, almost rushed, and disappeared into the terminal with Sarah. I watched her go, a strange heaviness settling in my chest. I told myself it was just because I'd miss her for a few days. The first day of the trip, Rose texted me pictures of her and her friends by the pool. Sunlight, sunglasses, colorful drinks in their hands. It looked exactly like she'd promised. We had a few short calls, but she always seemed in a hurry. "We're just heading out," or "I'll call you later, okay?" became the default. By the second night, her text was slowed down. I figured they were just busy having fun. I didn't want to be the clingy husband blowing up her phone. Still, it felt strange that she hadn't sent me anything after dinner, when she usually liked sharing her meals or funny moments. On the third morning, I woke up to a single text. "Morning. Super tired. We'll call you later." I replied right away, but she didn't answer for hours. When she finally called, her voice sounded hoarse, like she'd been yelling or maybe laughing too much. She brushed it off, saying they'd gone to a club and danced all night. That evening, I decided to check Instagram. Rose's account was private, but Sarah's was public. I saw a few pictures from the trip, beach shots, group selfies, but something caught my eye. In one video, the camera panned across their table at a restaurant, and there was a man sitting next to Rose. She was leaning in toward him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't intimate exactly, but it also wasn't nothing. I told myself it could have been a friend of Sarah's or someone they met randomly. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I even went back and watched the video again, noticing small details. The way she brushed her hair behind her ear, the way he leaned toward her, the way her hand rested on the table between them. The rest of her trip passed in a haze for me. I tried to distract myself with work, with Netflix, with cleaning the house, but my mind kept circling back to that video. I didn't want to be paranoid, but something didn't feel right. When I picked her up from the airport, she looked amazing, tan, glowing, and wearing a sundress I'd never seen before. She hugged me, but there was a brief stiffness, like she was testing the waters. On the drive home, she talked about the trip, but her stories felt curated. Lots of talk about shopping, the beach, and just hanging out. No mention of that dinner or the man from the video. That night, while she showered, I noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a notification from a contact saved only as Jay. I didn't touch it, at least not then, but the name burned into my brain. She came out of the shower humming, oblivious to the fact that my mind was spinning. Over the next week, things felt different. Rose was affectionate, but in short bursts, like she was compensating for something. She kept her phone close, even when she went to the bathroom. She also seemed distracted, like her thoughts were somewhere else. I asked if everything was okay, and she'd just smile and say, "Of course, why?" One night, while she was in the kitchen, her phone buzzed again. This time I glanced at the screen and saw a preview of the message from Jay. "Last weekend was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it." My stomach dropped. I quickly looked away before she returned, my hands trembling. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to figure out how to approach this without blowing everything up if I was wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more that gut feeling from before the trip came roaring back, stronger than ever. And that was when I decided I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The day after I saw that message from Jay, I couldn't focus on anything else. I kept replaying every moment leading up to the trip, every tiny shift in Rose's behavior, every smile that now seemed to carry a shadow. My instincts were screaming at me, but I still needed something concrete before confronting her. I started paying closer attention. Rose had always been an open book with her phone. She'd leave it on the counter, screen unlocked, never caring if I glanced over. Now it was like her phone was an extension of her body. She carried it from room to room, even took it with her when she went to grab the mail. That alone was a huge change. I didn't want to be that guy snooping through his wife's stuff, but every time her phone buzzed, I felt my chest tighten. The name Jay kept flashing in my mind like a warning sign. Who was he? How did she know him? And why was he texting her about last weekend? 2 nights later, she told me she was going to meet Sarah for dinner. That wasn't unusual. Sarah was her closest friend, but something about her tone made me pause. She was overly casual, tossing out the plan as she grabbed her purse, like she'd rehearsed the delivery. I asked where they were going, and she said, "Just that Thai place downtown." While she was gone, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into our phone carrier's account. I told myself I was just going to glance at the call and text logs. What I saw made my stomach churn. There were dozens of texts to a number I didn't recognize, starting the day she left for the trip and continuing daily since. The number wasn't Sarah's, and the texts were often late at night, even after I'd gone to bed. When she came home from dinner, she was smiling and humming. I asked how Sarah was, and she said, "Oh, she's great," before disappearing into the bedroom to change. I caught a faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes. I didn't mention it, but it was like a knife in my ribs. The next morning, while she was in the shower, her phone was left on the nightstand for once. My hands shook as I picked it up. The passcode was the same as before. I opened her messages and scrolled until I found Jay. My stomach dropped all over again. The messages weren't outright explicit, but the undertones were obvious. Things like, "Can't stop thinking about that view from the balcony," and "You looked incredible in that blue dress." One message from Rose read, "Wish we had more time that night." Another from him, "Next time, I'll make sure we do." I felt my throat tighten. My wife, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was speaking to another man in a way she'd never spoken to me in months. I didn't say anything right away. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I screenshotted the messages and sent them to my own phone. My hands were icy cold. It felt like I'd stepped out of my own body and was just watching someone else's life implode. Over the next few days, I started piecing things together. I remembered the man in Sarah's video from the trip. I zoomed in on the clip until the pixels blurred, comparing his hairline, build, and jawline to a picture on Jay's public Facebook profile. which I found after a reverse search of his number. Same guy, no doubt about it. He wasn't some stranger either. His profile showed he lived in Miami. His posts were full of beach shots, clubs, and pictures with different women. There was even a selfie he'd posted the same weekend Rose was there, on a balcony that looked eerily similar to the one in her hotel pictures. It all started to fit together, like a puzzle I didn't want to complete. Rose had clearly met him on that trip, maybe even planned to, and whatever happened between them didn't end in Miami. They were still talking, still keeping that connection alive. I decided to test her. One evening while we were on the couch, I casually asked about the Miami trip again. Did you guys meet anyone interesting down there? I kept my tone light, pretending I was just making conversation. She hesitated just for a fraction of a second before saying, "Not really, just some other tourists here and there." That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. A few days later, I caught her in another small lie. She told me she was going to run errands, but her location on Find My Friends showed her at a bar across town. I texted her, asking where she was, and she replied, "Target." My pulse pounded as I stared at the screen. When she got home, she had a single grocery bag with a loaf of bread and some milk, items she could have grabbed anywhere. It was the sloppiest cover-up I'd ever seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to her breathe beside me, wondering if she was dreaming about him. I thought about the trust we'd built over the years, about the promises we made on our wedding day, and I thought about how easily she was breaking them. The more I dug, the more little cracks appeared. Receipts in her purse from restaurants I'd never been to. A new perfume bottle hidden in the back of her dresser. Late-night bathroom breaks where she'd take her phone with her and stay gone for 20 minutes. I was collecting evidence, but it felt like collecting nails for the coffin of our marriage. I even reached out to Sarah just to see if she'd slip up. I sent her a message saying, "Sounds like you guys had a wild time in Miami." She replied with a vague, "Yeah, it was fun. Just what we needed." No details, no stories, almost like she was afraid of saying too much. And that told me she probably knew more than she was letting on. The final piece came when Rose left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she took a phone call outside. I saw her Facebook Messenger tab was still logged in. Against every moral fiber in me, I clicked. There were messages from Jay going back to the day after she returned from Miami. One in particular made my hands go cold. "Can't wait until you're back in town. You know where to find me?" And her reply, "I'm counting the days." I sat there staring at the screen, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed in on itself. She wasn't just being friendly, she was making plans to see him again, and she was lying to my face every single day while doing it. That night, I barely spoke to her. I kept my distance, answering her questions with short replies. She noticed and asked if something was wrong, and I just said I was tired from work. Inside, I was raging. I was also terrified. Terrified of the moment I'd finally have to confront her. Terrified of hearing her say the words that would confirm my worst fear. But I knew one thing for certain. The time for pretending was running out. I had the proof. I had the story. Now I just needed the courage to hear the truth from her lips. The night I decided to confront Rose, the air in the house felt different. Thick, heavy, almost electric. I had been sitting on the couch for hours, the screenshots on my phone burning a hole in my pocket, my mind rehearsing every possible scenario. I didn't want to explode, but I also couldn't take another day of smiling at her while knowing the truth. She came home from yoga, her hair slightly damp, wearing that same perfume I'd found hidden in the back of her dresser. She dropped her gym bag by the door and smiled at me, but her eyes flicked away just a little too fast. "Hey babe, how was your day?" she asked like nothing was wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. "We need to talk." The words seemed to freeze her in place for a split second before she sat down across from me. She forced a smile. "Okay, about what?" I didn't ease into it. "About Miami, about Jay." Her face went pale instantly, the color draining like I'd just pulled the plug on her composure. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. Then she laughed nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about." That laugh, that flimsy, defensive laugh, hit me like a slap. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots. You don't know what I'm talking about. Then explain these. I slid the phone across the table, my hand trembling, but my voice steady. She glanced at the screen, and for a moment, I thought she might actually faint. Her first instinct was denial. He's just a friend, she said, her voice shaking. We met at the hotel bar and we talked a little. That's it. I leaned forward. A friend you text every day? A friend you tell you're counting the days to see again? Come on, Rose. She bit her lip, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape route. Okay, I might have flirted a little. I had too much to drink one night, but it didn't mean anything. That was her second line of defense. Minimize it. Pretend it was just harmless. I felt the heat rising in my chest. Didn't mean anything. You lied about meeting anyone. You hid your phone. You've been sneaking out to meet him here. That's not nothing, Rose. That's betrayal. My voice cracked on the last word, the weight of it hitting me harder than I expected. She dropped her gaze to the floor, tears welling up. I didn't think you'd understand. Things have been off between us lately, and I cut her off. So your solution was to find someone else? To make plans with him while I'm sitting at home wondering why my wife is acting like a stranger? Her tears spilled over, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or from being caught. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. It was just supposed to be a distraction. The word distraction made me flinch. Was our marriage so dull to her that she needed this? I stood up, pacing the room because sitting still felt impossible. You don't get to decide that without talking to me first. Marriage isn't about hiding your problems until you find someone else to make you feel alive again. My voice echoed off the walls, and for a second, the silence between us was deafening. She wiped her face, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she said over and over, like the repetition would make it stick. But sorry didn't erase the images burned into my mind. The balcony, the messages, the way she'd smiled at him. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick. She asked if I was ending things right there. I said I didn't know yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Trust like ours doesn't grow back the way it was once it's been torn apart. That night, I slept in the guest room. She cried behind the closed door of our bedroom, but I couldn't bring myself to go in. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how many other moments over the years had been lies I never caught. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. She tried to talk, but I wasn't ready. I went through the motions of work, meals, errands, but everything felt hollow. I avoided mutual friends because I didn't want to see the look in their eyes if they knew. Eventually, I told her I wanted a separation. She begged for counseling, for a chance to prove she could change. But the thing about cheating, emotional or physical, is that it rewrites the story you thought you were living. Even if you patch the pages, you can still see the tears in the paper. I moved out 2 weeks later, taking just the essentials. The house felt cold when I left, but the weight on my chest was lighter than it had been in months. She sent me messages, some angry, some desperate, but I rarely replied. I needed to heal, and I couldn't do that in the same space where the lies lived. In the months that followed, I thought a lot about how easily trust can be destroyed. One trip, one secret, one choice to step outside the boundaries we promised each other. It made me realize that no matter how much love you think you have, it only takes one crack to let the whole thing collapse. I'll never forget the moment I saw her with him in that video, or the way her face looked when she realized she was caught. Those images are like scars. They fade, but they never truly disappear. I've learned to listen to that gut feeling, the one I tried to ignore before Miami. Trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, you can try to piece it back together, but the cracks will always be there. If someone lies to you once, it means they were willing to gamble your love for their own gain. And when you ignore the red flags, you're not protecting the relationship. You're just giving those lies more time to grow until they destroy everything you thought was real. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and leave your feedback in the comments below. Your support means the world.